Hello and welcome to a new session of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Glamorous World. And today I'm joined here by Sean DeNigris. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Tudor.
I hear that you want to share some new things in your project based on Glamorous Toolkit, and then perhaps you also have things that we can go and look into details of.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been some new features since we spoke last, and also, I think the problems that I'm running into are sort of generic problems, but it's beyond my understanding of how to make it kind of fun to debug. So I thought it might be a nice case study.
Let's see. Maybe it's beyond mine as well.
All right, let's see here. Let me try and share my image. All right, do you see GT?
I do.
Okay.
Lots of icons.
Lots of icons, yes. All right, so let's see.
So this is a Glamorous Toolkit in which, on top of which, you have loaded many basically extensions to deal with the kinds of things that you're interested in.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, the project, it's the same project that we looked at last time, is the Dynabook. And
yes.
it's just for anybody that didn't see the last video, it tries to look at, the Dynabook idea of L&K is more about making a system for people to use, but I was interested more in I want to be able to use a system myself. And if just me as a normal person with kind of average needs, what would I actually use a Dynabook for if I had it? And so since GT is the closest thing that I know of right now to the Dynabook dream, I've been kind of implementing normal things like finance software and calendars and libraries and project management on top of GT. So that's when you load the Dynabook project. I'm going to take these off because I'm not getting my own voice in the headset, and it's a little confusing. So when you this top row of buttons are kind of all the components. So we have an address book, books, meaning like financial books. Event log is the calendar. Inventory is a kind of a new thing. Library is just like a library, it's like a combination. It's actually combines what you might have like Calibra, like a digital library, and what you might have as a physical library, going to a public library out in the world. Network devices like server management, project management here. And this the resource library abstracts away file system location. So you just drop a file on GT. And if it's a known type like a PDF or an image, it'll give you a lot of useful actions for those. And we can take a quick look at that after. And also, you don't have to know where it is on the file system unless you want to know. You can set a policy for certain file types, but otherwise it just puts it somewhere. And then down here, these are just some utilities. So in the demo, I think we looked at the address book and the books last time. So there's not a ton new there, but one thing that I think is interesting and new is that on the Magritte Forms, we added these. It used to be for the one-to-one relationships and one-to-many relationships, very basic. The GT Magritte is more sophisticated, I think, in that regard. But for here, we were just doing a string printout. So now what we have here is it's actually integrated with Spotter. So I'm trying to think if this is, so if I just start typing, let's say ALBUS @. So it's gonna, in this case, it's a little bit of, I don't want to call it a hack, but it's kind of a, it's usually Spotter we think of as finding things that already exist, but it's very easily extensible to create things that don't exist yet that you want to exist. In this case, it says that, well, we don't know that email address, so we can create it for you. And in this case, it's the email address and the label for the field. So it's the main email address in this case by default, which we could change. And we click this. If we save the Magritte form and then open another inspector, then you see that the email address is now there, and we could add, multiple. It's kind of a nice, way. I think it takes what's done in a lot of the tools for thought software now, where you type a string and it turns it into quote unquote something, but this puts it on steroids, because of course this is a real object. I mean, this is an email field, and it could go down to having a real email address object that knows all the rules about what an email address could be. It starts out as a string, but as soon as you type it into Spotter, it becomes a domain object. So with all the power that you get in that.
That's nice. There's a widget in very similar area is if you look into the Git tool for a new repository, you have the possibility of defining directly there a baseline for the project. So basically the script you can just open any existing Git repository.
Okay.
For example, but just one that.
These are all going to be. Will it give me an error
You
if
can
I
just
try
pick.
to?
You can pick one. You can pick one from the list, and even if you don't,
okay. Gotcha.
I mean, not those. Something. Okay, you're that one. Yes. Something that you can control. So there, when, for example, if you say baseline, you say plus.
Okay.
You can say baseline, right? And so you get completion, like you have in Spotter. But then if you say baseline of something, and you say okay at the end, it will actually go and create the baseline of something for you.
Yeah.
And so the idea was to have a little tool where you just go and you set up everything about your project, your database for Lepeter, knowledge management, for your baseline, the scripts with which you load, your README, everything is just in one place, and then you're done in a few minutes. So and then of course, like if you expand, for example, if you expand again now the header of
this one.
the header of the repository, right? And you go to the baseline of something, you can press normally Command B, and you should be able to browse it.
Yeah. Very cool.
Right, which is it's kind of similar, right? And then you have this widget where you can have these multiple. You can basically reify little tiny objects, and we use this one for there, like in the Lepeter databases for for example, defining instance variables or traits in the class and things like that. So
yeah, one thing that I've been kind of thinking about and playing with, but I haven't found anything satisfying, is that there are some models where here it's kind of straightforward because an email address is one type, but then in other cases where there's multiple types allowed. Yeah, so I've been playing with trying to have create a little bit of framework around it to kind of, it's like a kind of a poor man's type system. It ends up being, because you have to define all the different ways that you can take a string and turn it into a type. But then what's even more complicated than that is when different parts of the input string might map to different fields in the object, and it becomes this combinatorial explosion, and it's probably beyond what I'm going to be able to do with Spotter, but I'm still trying to take it as far as I can.
Yeah, well, so maybe we've actually played with something recently, which is the ability for extract methods and extract method object refactorings.
Yes.
Where you have a similar problem. You're in the code, and so for example in Fire code, and you want to go and extract a method, but there you're going to say multiple things, like what is the name of the method, what is the order of the arguments, and then in which variable do you want to extract the method to. And so you have multiple things that you need to go and set up. Yeah. But at the end you have we can do everything in the editor. So by just providing a constraint basically editor, and you can basically you're probably having a very similar problem.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
You want to have not necessarily like a free form string, but it's kind of a projectional editor. But in our case, it's super, like we're just constraining it to a specific area. of the text, but you can just produce something that where you are entering the whole thing with all the parameters. If you want, we can take a look at an example just to have a feel for that.
Sure.
So, okay. Okay, extract. I'm going to give you a small script and we'll pass it by chat.
Okay.
And then you can play with it. So let's try this.
Share again. Okay.
And just open the playground.
Okay.
Pasting would be interesting.
I'm just seeing. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I'm sharing, the chat disappeared, so I'm just looking for it. Did you say you're going to paste it in the chat?
No, you should. Yeah, I did paste it in the chat.
Oh, I don't see it.
Okay, then basically pick any. You can pick any class, any method that is a bit longer. This one just a script that it's not in the. Okay, I paste it here in this chat as well.
Got it.
So this is a script that will just create a method which has multiple things. It has some local variables, right? And has multiple statements there. So just execute that. And let's, for example, browse this something class. Okay, and we go in right on. Okay. Now, for example, try to select stream next put all, just that line. Next put all something. Yeah, now we right click on it and try to do extract method. So now you can you can say by default it's here, it says I'm going to put it into self, but you can choose some other variable, because I mean something could be a variable, a stream could be a variable, in which this would potentially also make sense. So you can drag, you can click on that one, and then if you pick another one, let's say for example a stream, then we'll see that something changed here, right? It's no longer a stream, is no longer an argument, because it's no longer needed. But now, of course, you have a new thing to add here, which is object. So you have to double click on that if you don't like object. And now, of course, you can enter the name of a class. So type, for example, stream, for example, here would be. So, and there you get a completion like you would expect. And then you can still continue writing here.
Oh, sorry, I pressed tab.
Yeah.
That wasn't a good thing to do. I thought it would get me to the underscore.
Actually, it should have, but I don't know why I didn't. Right, so, okay, so press enter and then, right, so you can say right on here. Okay, so this would be one way of implementing this, but let's pick another one from here. Let's go back to self. Right. So now you can say, you know, write something on, or, and then tab would get you to the next thing. But you can say, oh, you know, maybe I write on something. Right, this is also possible. In which case I should go and change stream and something, right? So I have to click on those buttons to move them around. Run right, for example. Yeah. Yeah, so these are both possible, right? But the thing here is that we can manipulate a complicated set of settings, basically, directly in the editor. Just creating an editor that can handle the whole flow. So let's cancel this one for now. You can also press OK, but yeah, let's cancel and let's select the whole thing, for example, here, or just two of them, just up to two, up to here. Okay, so and now we right click on it and let's do another refactoring, which is a little bit more complicated, which is this one here, extract method object. So extract method object is is kind of different in that we want to not just create a method, but we want to create a whole object to which we set some state, and then we call a method on. So we encapsulate this one as like a strategy object or something like this.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but now we have more things we need to choose from. So first of all, we say, oh, maybe let's go and change new class and say some class. And okay. Right. And now let's say, oh, but I now want to change and define the superclass differently. So I can click on this now expander, just like would expect, and I can go and change the superclass in the package. So we can do that. But then if I go here, it's even more interesting. Like, so before I had the possibility of moving an argument from left to right. But now we have two areas, because this is here I have one area, and then here I have another area. There are two distinct areas in which I want to move arguments. And so, for example, that's why we have another set of icons here, this one and this one. And so, for example, you can say something, let's move this one at the bottom. Right, so now it's not set up front, it is passed into the new method. Or let's move it back to our thing. And so now we have the possibility of yeah, we set it up front, right? So we can move between different areas of something that can be like a more complicated landscape to set from. So, and yeah, you know, like if when you like it, then you can click on the button and then you get the preview of the different changes that you're gonna undertake. So and it's kind of this was basically the most difficult thing we probably have done in terms of UI, where you do not want to have a modal dialogue to manipulate a complicated concept. So I suspect that something along these lines could be quite interesting when you're defining you know, structured concepts.
Yeah,
because it's in a way this is a structural editor, but in this case you can even embed it inside normal text. So you do not have to be either in a structural editor or in a normal editor. It's like it's just a mix. So it's a completely, so the opportunities are, to my mind, they are very large.
yes. Yeah, so this is what you would build if you were building today. And what I was playing with was what I would build if I was in the 1980s. So I had...
No, but the thing, it's not about 1980s. Like, we didn't have these kinds of options a month ago.
Yeah.
So we left all of these kinds of interactions rather late in this thing because it's hard. Like, we started this refactoring literally almost 4 years ago, I think, because it's just it's not trivial to be able to have all the infrastructure, be it fast enough and control everything and make it robust enough that it doesn't create unwanted results or so. It wasn't trivial. It didn't exist really. I think we have a reasonable solution now, but it's very, very recent.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to show you this one, just to maybe it, because especially in this world where, you know, people go from natural text and they want to reify concepts, I think it can be super powerful there, right? When you're saying, maybe I have something, oh, elbows form, blah, 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 and then you select it and say reify to, and then you're going to create the type, but maybe the type is going to be defined by some, like the editor that you have there is going to be defined by the type, but the way you know, if one of the things that you learn from Magritte is that you can define the way you manipulate the description of the types, it can be through the same kind of interface that you manipulate, that description gives you for just manipulating concrete data. It's pretty interesting. And if you pair it with the reasonably interesting UI, you can produce a completely different type of an experience.
Yeah.
That actually feels like magic, but it's otherwise just normal text.
Yeah, no, I actually like that, because I was coming at it from the other side, which was kind of, I was looking at, how like to parse a string in a more sophisticated way. So in the event log, if you start putting in a date, now it knows that that's the start date. And then if you do like an @ and you do like something that's parsable as a time, it'll give you that, that'll be the time, and then whatever else will be the title. So,
Yeah.
I was kind of coming at it from another angle, but this works great again. Or I shouldn't say great, but this works sufficiently when there's kind of one type. But then when each of these fields really is kind of, it's stable. It's like, a date is a date and a time is a time. But then if it was kind of like a one-to-many relation here, where now it could be 6 different types, and then something like you're talking about would be much more. Because what I ended up having was I ended up having like 20 different processors with all the different combinations, and it becomes unwieldy.
Yes. Nice. This is interesting.
And so just in case anybody comes along looking, I'll just show what underneath. So in the Magritte form where it has the the spotter integration, let me just find one, I think probably in the event. Okay, so the way it works is that, let's find a description. Maybe participants would be good. All right.
Notes description can participate. Yeah.
So this is the event object, and for participants, it's a one-to-many with items in the address book. And then so what you do is there's this GT search source method added to the element descriptions in Magritte. And what you do is you basically pass it something with spotter processors. So it's just a hook to pass anything with spotter processors. So this really could just say, this could be like MP address book unique instance. The only reason I did it in this sort of convoluted way is that
this is nice.
Magritte, you don't like to store blocks because it can,
if you don't serialize them. Nice. Nice. So. Right. So just to maybe clarify for others. So what we see here is a description of what we've seen before in the form. Where you see, for example, in this case, we see an event, and then you have a field with participants. And then, we're going to see here, I guess, such an event, right? And we get the form, then we get the participants, and then there we have a button, and then it should say, what should it search? Where should it search, right? And then you need to have, given the object that you have, this PP event, it should start from some known source of searching, and then here it just sends address book to PP event, and it will give an address book that afterwards is going to be searchable when we click on here, right? Did I get it right?
Yep. So all it does is
pretty cool.
Yeah. Basically cool. It takes, if we went back to the demo, and this is not and took like the address book singleton, which I'll just use the demo one. This has different spotters, right? So this has spotters for people, spotters for organizations, and then would have spotters for like new organizations and new people. So what that does is that spotter hook is it just takes all of these spotters and embeds them into the form for the participants of the event, and then when you click them, it adds it to the collection. So all those spotters that we just saw in the address book are available here. And then there's sometimes it gets like, there's actually kind of a whole, this is like a very simple case, the participants one. But if we go to, I think, PP project, I think this is probably a much more sophisticated. So if we go to, so this is, let me just quickly say what this is so just is a little easier to follow. So this is a project management system inside GT. So it follows loosely the principles of GPD by David Allen. So if you're familiar with that, so it basically, you have these projects, and a project is anything that takes more than one step to do. And so the projects can have sub projects. But when you initially create a thing to do, you don't want to have to think a lot about it in the moment because it's going to break your flow. So you put it on a capture pad or an inbox. And so when you initially put these things on there, it's just, it has a captured status and it shows up in your captured pad. So now what you want to do is you want to think about it enough so that it won't be gnawing at your mind. So like to finalize the trip, maybe we have to like buy some plane tickets, right? And then that'll be a child project underneath this main project. So then if we go back here to steps, it's buy plane ticket. And then you have to say like, all right, now I've done enough subtasks where I'm sure that I'm going to get this done to my satisfaction. So then you can change the status from captured to active. And then once it's an active project, when you go back here, it won't show up on your capture pad. So these are just new things that this is like a short-term storage, like a RAM kind of thing, where I just want to jot it down and not think about it. And then when I get to it, I'm going to actually put it in my system in a way that I know that it's going to get handled correctly. Now, another thing that it has is that, you know, if you're buying plane tickets, I may have to talk to my spouse about that first, or maybe my spouse is going to be the one buying the tickets. So then you're going to have to be waiting for it. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, so I may, so you can actually do, there's this thing called, so then there's like you could have a project that's waiting for somebody. So, and, you know, so this is actually pulling contacts off my address book to see who it thinks I'm waiting for. But I use a shorter name. So it actually, you know, eventually it would match her. So this is the combinatorial explosion thing that I was talking about a nice way to match a partial string. But, you know, so you can do that. And then if I say, so I'm waiting for her. And so now that's a step. And now this will be on a separate list of things that I'm waiting for people to do. Now, the cool thing about this now is that if you know, I can't do this in the demo, but the cool thing about this, because it'll tie to the singleton instead of the demo book. But if I put who I'm waiting for here, and I went to their contact in the address book, there'll actually be up here, there'll be an agenda, and it'll have all the things I'm waiting for. So now you know, this is, it's hard for somebody, I mean, you get it right away, but it's hard for somebody that doesn't live in a Dynabook or a Smalltalk system to understand this, because the project and the contact doesn't have a note about the things I'm waiting for that really goes to like some other project software that I have to look up. And the project doesn't go to like what the project management software's idea of a person is. This is the actual person from the actual address book with all of the facilities that, you know, the full person has. And this is the full project, and they're just interconnected. There's no application distinction between, this would be like, you know, Microsoft Teams, and this would be, you know, my Google contacts, and gosh knows if you could even have those two things from different companies talk to each other. But here they're just in different panes of you know, on the same level with all the power reserved. So
that's so cool. I mean, so if you know, you can look at this one and say, you know, maybe you know, like, I don't know, this button here is maybe not properly aligned with something with this one here, right? There's like this empty space here. So there's one way to look at things, right? The other one would say, oh, but there are so many features here, it's going to take so long to learn, you know, how to use a tool like that, right? And then there is the other way in which to look at it and say, oh, so you're an individual, and then you build your own what is it, like an address book and a planning software, a getting things done type of workflow, and that to me is just, you know, mind-boggling, because we haven't, you know, when we build GTs, like, this is not necessarily the thing that we wanted people necessarily to go and build by themselves. And it's so exciting to you know, like to see this one unfold. Like you know, theoretically that these things are possible, but seeing people actually doing it with essentially no real external input is yeah, it's still it's still an experience. So yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I actually, the reason I wanted to go into this was just if we go to, so now getting things done has this concept of support materials. And it's just like, it could be paper or files or whatever, things that you need to see when you're doing this project. So this, of course, this is connected to the inventory object that I touched on briefly before, but it's also connected to the library we could look at later. So the library has, basically every digital file on my computer that represents some sort of authored work, be it a video or an audio, or it could be remote, it could be local, that's available here. So, so if I'm going to need those things, and the idea is like, if there's a book on my shelf that I need to complete, let's say it was, finished term paper, and I have a few research books that I need, it's important to know that, because if I'm planning time for this particular task, I have to maybe bring those with me. So for support materials, it's a challenge because it could pull from the physical inventory. It could pull from the digital library. There's a few different places it could pull. So what I wanted to look at was in the Magritte form, the support material description is a much more probably convoluted example of the spotter integration. Okay, so this here. So if we remember before, the GT search source was basically a message send. It was pretty easy. So, but now this is a much more complicated example. So the GT search source, the building of it is this whole thing. So what it's saying here is basically that we're going to, so let me see, I got to see what it's saying here. Okay, so these are all the different types that we might create a new one of for support materials. So it could be a new authored work, which is out of the library, the digital library. It could be a new library item. The library item is also out of the digital library, but it represents things that are like a web video, a YouTube video, a tweet, things that are you don't have physically in your hands, but you want to refer to remotely. An inventory item is a physical inventory thing, something like a physical book that I have in my house. And then a resource, as we talked about before, is a file, but abstracted away from the location. So what it's saying is that this spotter might find or create any one of these things. And the places you're going to look are the inventory, the library, this one actually here is, it's just to create new library items, because there's no repository for it. There's no like database of library items. And the last one is the resource library. So what this uses, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So
I just wanted to say, one way in which you could possibly extend this to make it more generic, so that it's not even hard-coded here, would be to introduce, let's say, so if every one of these is a hierarchy, right? And in the, you can have a notation that says that you're going to add the pragma for your materials, right? And then you're going to put it in the root of of your hierarchy, and also make sure that the root of the hierarchy is an instance variable, is a unique instance. And this would then allow you to just create a new, just add new plugins with actually not even changing this one if you don't want to. But this is different here, because this one delegates something. So but anyway, it's super cool.
Well, it's still in flux, and I'm really resisting the urge to optimize or to solidify in a particular direction until I know what I'm dealing with. But one of the things that it does is, if you go to the authored work, for instance, it has, oh no, it's probably a library item. So we go to library item. All right, so it has this, is this it? No, that's not it. I'm trying to think.
It might be in one of the subclasses. Yeah.
So there's this here. There's this boy.
Let's look at the hierarchy here.
Take me 1 second. It's just trying to think of what it's called. Is it spot? So there's a framework that and it might be similar to what you're talking about. It takes for a class hierarchy. It kind of, you tell it for this hierarchy, if I give you a string and I want back an instance,
Ah, yes, it will
how do I
match.
make it?
It will. You will look
Yeah.
up the right class to instantiate.
So here I could just do
Nice.
it. This way is not going to be that satisfying, but it's like, at least I know where it is. So if we go to object, and I'm pretty sure it's a PE something. So let's just take a quick look. All right, PE.
Action. Pick up. No.
Oh, maybe it's on the class side. I think it's on the class side.
But you might want to search here.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so these two methods here. So these
Mhm.
are extensions that I put on class. So it, for any particular subclass, it says, can I make an instance from this string? And then how would I actually go about making an instance from this string? And so you
Right.
actually, there's a few different, I actually kind of bastardized the spotter filters for that. So there's a few different filters built in. So that's what it's doing here. So this
Nice. I
PEGT
see.
deepest sub instance filter takes the most specific class. So because the problem you run into is you have a generic web resource class, but you have a YouTube video class, and then you don't want to match the web resource class unless it's the type of web resource that you don't have a more specific class to handle. So this one will take the most specific one. So if you passed a YouTube URL to the LL library item instance, it would match to LL YouTube video. But if it was just a kind of a generic URL that it didn't understand, it would just give you a web resource. So then it has there's a few different ones like that. There's you could take the deepest resource. You could do just instances of this particular class without considering subclasses, or you could go through the subclass hierarchy. But in this case, instead of doing the deepest one, it'll give you any relevant results for any subclasses. Because sometimes you want to choose. You may want the more generic one or the more specific one, and there's no way to tell from the context of the input. So it'll just try to match every subclass in the hierarchy, create an instance from a string if it can handle it, and then it'll let you pick from the spotter results. So that's that. And then so now okay, so back here. So these are the two major classes that help you to embed the spotter into Magritte. So the composite search just says that I'm going to give you a bunch of different objects and just flat collect all of the processors from all of the objects into this list. So in this case, for the project, for the support materials, because we're pulling from the inventory and the library, just to take two, then when you click that magnifying glass next to the support materials, it's going to give you not only all the spotters from, like we saw before, it gave you all the spotters from the address book, but here it's going to take the spotters from the inventory and the library and make a composite of them. So it's just a way to do what we did before with the address book, but to do it with multiple objects and to combine them into one list of processors. And then the delegated search, and then the delegated search, it just says it's going to give you back something that spotter will think is a normal thing that produces spotters, but it's just going to give you back this particular spotter from this particular item. And
this is like the forward view in the flow.
Exactly,
view.
like the forward view. And it's pretty simple to do. It has this one spotter that defines, but it's doing
That's
it
actually
in a
very
dynamic
elegant.
way.
That's very elegant.
Yeah.
We'll steal that.
Please do. So, all right. So that's that. So I just, one of the things I wanted to show is some of the extensions that I made to GT, because I think they could be either, if not generally useful, at least inspirational, for other people to do their work. So I wanted to give an idea of how customizable GT is underneath. Like, you're really not limited to what's available in any meaningful way. Obviously I've been working on this stuff for a long time, but the GT stuff, the layer of GT stuff on top was actually pretty seamless. Like, the building of the models has been something I've been working on for maybe 10 years, slowly over time. But just doing the integration with the spotter and the Magritte, that was minimal. It was 1% of the work or less. So let's see if there's anything. So that's pretty much most of it. Oh, and I could show this actually. So let me just see. I don't know if the bridge is running, the Python bridge. So if not, I'll just let this go in the background while I'm working. But so this is something, it's not in getting things done. It's a little bit more than just a list of projects. There's also like you have a file of things that it's like things you're going to review later. Like I'm going to read this magazine, but I'm not going to do it now. I'll do it when I have time. So this is a higher level that includes the project stuff we saw, but it also has all the things you have to review. And one of the things I'm playing with here is integration with Microsoft OneNote. And so I built the Microsoft has this Microsoft authentication library, and it's a way to do auth to do like a single logon for all their services. So I didn't really feel like implementing that in GT, just because, I mean, it probably wouldn't be that hard, and I could probably use Sven. Sven has a little bit of support. I could probably adapt, but you know, it's already done in Python. So what I did was, since we have the Python bridge, I just, let's see here, sale application. Okay. So I just wrapped the Python stuff that they do. So what this does is, so this is an MSAL application. And what it does is, let me find something interesting. So it wraps, basically this is what they do in the Python library to get a token. So what you do is the major thing you do is you get acquired token interactive. So what this does is this just going to call the MSAL Python library, and actually it's pretty cool. It opens up what we're used to with single sign-on. It opens up a browser window, and then you sign in to Microsoft, and then it closes it, and then it gets the token back into GT. So it was just easier to wrap that part in Python. And once you have the token, though, it's pretty much just REST. It's a REST API through Microsoft Graph. So let me give an example of. So like for Microsoft, for OneNote, the URL is just this, graph, microsoft.com, blah, 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 /OneNote. And so the only thing you have to do now is every time you make a request, you just have to pass the bearer access token that they gave back from the, so all this the MSAL application, all it does is it has a ZN client in there that is set up with the bearer token. And then so you make the request through the application. And if you go it just kind of wraps it in a nice way. So so then most of the stuff that's returned is JSON. So then this is wrapped further into get JSON. So when you go to these endpoints like the Microsoft OneNote notebooks, you get JSON, you pass the URL, it runs it through the application, it appends the bearer token to the client, and it gives you back the results. So now let me just see if this is working. And otherwise I'll have to start the bridge, and maybe we could look at one of those other things that I was needed some help on. Let's see, where was it? In here? Okay. So if we go to OneNote inbox, actually, let me go to OneNote. That should work. Why is that not working? Oh yeah, I just did a refactor of this thing. Okay, let me go a different way. Okay, we can do this. So let me just see, it might be asking me for a token. Give me 1 second here. No, it's probably trying to start the bridge. All right. So while it's doing that.
So this one you mean by the bridge is, so here you executed something and now it starts Python bridge.
Yeah.
For handling the.
And this is actually, I don't know if I filed a bug for this, but now that my pip file is pretty complex, it's the starting of the bridge is timing out. I'm not sure exactly what the solution is for that, but
yeah.
Let me start it manually. And actually, I don't know if you saw, I posted some of the hacks that I made to the Python bridge to
Yes,
merge all the
I did.
files together. So that, I mean, for me, like, I don't know what Python people do without something like that, and it doesn't seem to exist in the Python world. But you have all these sub projects and all these pip files, and then I don't know, what are people just cutting and pasting the dependencies into like their master pip file for the whole project. So, but
Yeah.
John Brandt, you know, it was pretty easy to port the TOML parser from Antler 4, and pip files are TOML, and then
Maybe you can show that. It would be interesting.
yeah, sure, okay. All right, so let me grab a pip file. Hold on. I have multiple screens and windows are opening up all over the place. Just give me 1 second. Okay. All right. Let me try and share this. Best way to do this. All right, I'll try this way. All right. So this is just a finder on the on my image folder, and so these are the iceberg repositories. And so if I just pick some random, let's see some that have Python dependencies. All right, here. So Computer World, for instance, has a Python dependency and it has a pip file. But now you won't be able to see the pop-up. Let me see if I can share this whole desktop here. Okay. Desktop 1. Desktop 2. Okay, here we go. All right. So can you see GT with the Finder on top?
Yeah.
Okay. So this Computer World here has a Python dependency, and then the pip file has just this one thing, this next step plist, right?
Yeah.
And then if we go to, let's say, Living Library probably has something. And then we have a few here. So we have Playwright and MPV Silence. And then so out of the half a dozen to a dozen libraries that compose my Dynabook project, there's a half a dozen different pip files. But then the Dynabook itself has to be all of those. So, you know, obviously we could just have, you know, Python with a pip file here that we copied and pasted, but I have no interest in doing that or maintaining that. So what it does is there's actually a hook that takes all those pip files and combines them into a master pip file in the Faro Bridge directory. And so we can see the next step plist from the Computer World, and we can see Playwright and MPV Silence down there. So the way that works is that we have this TOML parser, which was basically, I went on the Antler 4 Git repo, GitHub repo, and dropped the Antler into the converter, which we did a whole, John Brandt and I did a whole YouTube video detailing that process, which people can check out if they're interested. But so now we have a full TOML parser, and we have, let's see, so we have, actually we'll go right to, so we have a pip file object, which is basically just, it's a type of RL resource that we talked about before. So it's just a wrapper on a file that abstracts away the location. And then when you refresh the contents, it takes this pip file parser, which is basically just, it utilizes that TOML. This is some of the underlying stuff that was provided by SMAC when we created the TOML parser. And it visits so it's very basic, because as you can see, my pip files are really just, it's just like packages are pretty much the only thing I'm interested in. So it requires the packages and the dev packages, and it just turns them into this, the actual model of a pip file, which is sources, packages, and dev packages. And then, go ahead.
Why is the parser merged with the visitor? And also, like, what is in this parse file? There's another actual TOML parser in the parse file at the bottom.
The parse file at the bottom.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a class sign just to use.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And so there's just a starting visitor. It's not really a parser.
Yeah, it was, this just seemed
Mhm.
like a very straightforward way to do it because if I utilize the visitor, I really just had to do these. I guess it's, I kind of, I use visitors for a lot of things that are probably not strictly visitors, but it's, it's very tempting because you have the whole.
No. This is a visitor. It's just that the word parser makes you think of you get an input and you produce an AST, a tree. But here you don't produce a tree. We have a word for this one. We use the word importer because here you're actually building a model, a graph typically of your, right? So you have the parser that takes some string into a tree or some sequence into, and it builds a tree out of it. And then you want to build a graph out of the tree, and that part we call an importer typically.
Gotcha.
And sometimes in our typical design, the importer has a visitor. The importer is not necessarily a visitor because, for example, here you have a single input, but sometimes you might have multiple inputs, multiple kinds of inputs, and you still want to produce a single model at the end. And so for every one of the inputs, you might want to use a visitor. And that will basically, it's just a more general structure. And then you don't have to think about it. So that's the nice thing about those kinds of patterns. So it's nice.
Okay. Yeah, so we parse the text and grab the package names basically. And then when we merge in this pip file with another pip file, since we already have, a model, it's very simple. It just takes our dev packages and adds the other dev packages and our packages and adds the other packages and our requirements and merges in the other requirements. And then you can write it back out to a file. So
yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
So, this was actually not a lot of work in the sense that I really wanted to learn how to use SMAC. So this would have been borderline insane probably to go about, creating a TOML parser just to parse pip files, but it seemed like a simple enough spec that it was a good test case for me to really learn the ins and outs of SMAC. But once that parser was available, this stuff was trivial. So let me try and I'm just going to start the bridge manually while we're talking, and then okay. All right, so let's see if that works now. So we want to go to okay. Because I did the installation outside and the bridge, starting the bridge failed, so I have to restart it probably. Okay, here we go. I'll do this off screen and then I'll come back.
Okay, so you're now logging in
Exactly.
externally. Then you get the token. And then you're able to browse your notebooks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now this is a list of all the notebooks in my account. This demo notebook, demo section. And then it's actually not catching the pages at the moment, so it'll probably take a second for it to come up. I'm still working on the sync. So, I was really excited. Oh, it actually, I'm working on the sync, so it's not going to come up, but there's actually a lot of, the only reason I wanted to show you is that there's a live view that it takes one note, part of the API, it gives you HTML contents. And then so I wrote a thing that it converts it into like block. So if you have some links,
nice.
and images and stuff, it renders it all in GT. But
Is this the place where you had this issue with an item of a list taking a long time to render
yeah, yep, this is it.
because of the icons, or
Well, what
did you
happened
get,
was,
or
so in my actual notebook that I use day to day, there's like 100 pages. So what was happening, the problem with these pages is that, now let me try and let me grab one. Hold on.
so for background, there was an issue that Sean raised on Discord, which is that while even though the construction of a list is indeed lazy, when it gets to be displayed and when the display, the label associated wherever each list item is expensive, then it still takes a while until things appear on screen, and then there's no feedback associated to that.
So here we go. So this is just an example of it's so when you
yeah,
when you share Twitter things, if you click, and it's so silly when you click like share to OneNote, but then if you go save right away and the picture didn't load yet, it gives you this stupid bird that you can't do anything with. But this is actually what's in OneNote. This is what you would see in OneNote. The link in the so the problem is, and I don't even think we need a live instance for this. The problem is the way these things work in OneNote is that if we go to the raw HTML view, so this is so silly. There's the title, right? And right now it's telling me the title is the Twitter link. But then if I go to the HTML, let's see what the title is. So here there's no title. So in OneNote, there's this weird interplay where sometimes the title that's returned by the API is the title. And sometimes the title that's the HTML title is the title. And sometimes neither one might be the title. So the problem is, just to populate the list, I have to do a very complicated set of like GET requests and parsing and matching. So when you have 100 of them, it just becomes ridiculous. So what I was trying to do is put a placeholder title, like the simplest thing I could possibly, that would be not totally wrong, and then asynchronously populate the titles as it happened. But it ended up that that took so long that it was more annoying to wait for, like, let's say it took 30 seconds to freeze, or it would take like 3 minutes to do it asynchronously. So it was less annoying for me to just let the UI freeze and then just have it all at once.
I see.
Alrighty. So
yeah, interesting.
Let's go back. But this is so I'm using the Graph API mostly for OneNote, but it could be used for anything. So now anything that anybody wants to do with the Microsoft Graph API and GT, they can download that MSAL. And it's not a true bridge. I hesitate to call it a bridge because it is leveraging the Python for the authentication. But once you get past the authentication, everything else is just REST. So it's all in GT after that. So the problem that I had mentioned was the debugging problem was in regard to custom annotations. So as part of the Dynabook project, I have this annotation that it could refer to, we'll say arbitrary objects, but obviously arbitrary, well, maybe not obviously, but arbitrary objects reachable from a certain, start point.
Yeah.
It's not the whole image object graph. So one of the problems that I ran into is that, like, for instance, so if I autocomplete name here, I want the spotter to already have come up. But
completion,
yeah, but the way it is, it doesn't come up until I start typing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have any, I worked on that for hours and got absolutely nowhere because, it's just so different. It's so kind of deep in the guts of the system and not obvious how to like flatten it out into something with with fast feedback. Because what would happen was I was trying to like put halts in places, and then I would either freeze the UI or the halt wouldn't get triggered. So let me go.
Okay, so
this is the completion. And so, one of the things that made it hard, in my opinion, is that the built-in completion, is it in, do you happen to know annotation, LE annotation? It's probably
I think there's a completion controller.
completion. Okay, so one of the problems that in my view right now that makes it difficult is that all of the built-in annotations are in this one completion visitor, except for the word example, right? Now the word example is nice because you can say like, all right, these are the couple of things that the word does, right? It's like got nice rendering and it pulls from a dictionary and this, that, and the other thing. And if I need to do that, this is the example that I need to reference. But then when you get in here, because everything's mixed together, you end up with like these giant, and I'm trying to think of which, there's like this one, you end up with these giant, it's just not clear like this, right?
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
it's so mixed together. It's not possible for someone of my intelligence to use this as an example to create something.
No, this is not the right example. That's why we created these extra separate examples. This is, you can think of it like that's the first playground we had just to get something going. And then we build these other examples so that we can have a reason to generalize the underlying infrastructure. So the to-do is one that shows kinds of completions, but the word, I think, is the one that we have explicitly packaged separately.
Yeah. Is there an intention to eventually package these separately? Okay.
Yeah, we do,
real.
but the and so, for example, yes, but it's so when you look at the annotation, like the word annotation and the word completion, which is in this separate package. Where is it? Yeah, just look for play word annotation.
Any of these?
Yeah, first one, for example. So this one is a separate package just to show that it's possible. The parser, the scanner, the styler, the completion, everything is completely separate. So if you want to know how do I make it separate, but you already know that, then you can look here, right? If you want to look for specifics of how do I implement something inside, then you can also now already take a look at the other ones that already exist. Not because that's the blueprint, but it will give you that little detail that is done in one place, but not, maybe it's not for the word completion by default. So for example, for the when you type for example, if you do an annotation which is called, let's say, GT class in a new snippet, and you do this, then you'll immediately have this, and then you get the completion with the name of the class.
Yes. Now, sorry, go ahead. I did get this far, but then now the way that happens is this.
I understand. Yes, it is.
So I tried. I mean, I did. I started to decompose it, but I just, at the end of the day, and I ended up resorting, embarrassingly, to putting beacon signals everywhere just to try and
Why
get
is
it.
that embarrassing? Why is that embarrassing? We've done it so that it's that basically people have a good feeling for debugging when they don't know anything about anything. So it's not embarrassing. It's an elegant thing to do.
I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing, like what I would like to do is have some way to operate, you know, in a test or an example or a playground or something, and exercise this without having to like physically type stuff here and see what happens.
Oh, but you just have to, you just want to do just call the visitor on the AST.
Okay. How do I do that?
So for example, take a parser, let's take a file snippet.
Okay.
And if you do let's do a lib parser. This is just a global thing, right? And that's okay. Parser, parse. And now you can give it the thing that you have at the bottom. And let's see what happens. Okay, so this one gives you yeah. So we have to find the parser that is actually used for this. Is obviously because it's not finished. So I gave you the exception, but what happens is that there is a way to parse this thing with errors. I just don't know which one it is.
Oh, I think. Hold on, wait. There's parse with errors, right?
Yeah.
Parse with errors, maybe.
Yeah, so this is basically what we would. That's not. Yeah. So now you have an idea of the AST. So now you get an AST back, and the AST will have error nodes inside, which is fine. Right. So for example, the annotation, you can see there's smack error node.
Mhm.
And now you want to apply, so that's, you put this one in an AST variable, and now you will, you can take your visitor, the layer annotation completion visitor, for example, or one of them, and then you can pass it to over the AST.
Okay, so what did you say that again? I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
So the result of this is a syntax tree, right? Is the node.
Yep.
So you can put this one in a variable, and then you can take a visitor and then traverse the AST with the visitor.
Ah, okay. So this is, I can put, I need to call something, I need to send something to this to get the AST, or this is what I need
This
to
is
pass?
the AST. That is the
Oh,
AST.
all right, well, it said
And
note,
this thing
so
that you see, yeah. So every
That's a-
AST is made of nodes, and that is the tree. That's the
Okay.
whole tree of what you've written there. So, and then maybe this one, the object annotation completion, probably has some sort of, it needs to know something. Like my suspicion is it needs to know what should it be completed or something. Something like,
I'm not sure.
I don't know either, but
I'll just try. Accept, right?
we can,
Accept.
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, so that's not the, I think this is not the, is this the right? It should be the, no. So, but that's your, I don't know what this is. That's your annotation. Right now you passed something else to it.
Mm.
So if you just want your annotation, then we're only going to parse with your parser produce your
Right.
AST, and it's just probably going to be without the curly brace and just the thing inside. Then you will get your AST, and then you're going to pass that one to your visitor.
Okay. Like that.
Well, I guess also, no, it's not going to be not le parser, but it's your parser.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It's OL object something. Okay, and let's see what if you have an AST from there. So you got an AST,
Hmm.
and now you if you accept that. So this obviously it needs something. It wants this composite thing. So we have to see what that is, right? So that's an instance variable that you have to set up front.
Hmm.
And that composite needs to have the position, which is probably the position of the cursor, at which point it needs to complete something, I suspect.
Hmm.
So, and that's what you would, how you would set it up.
Okay. So, I mean, but this, it's not that so question number one, I think is answered. I'm not missing some sort of thing that's already set up to make it easy to test completed measures. It's not like it's in there somewhere and I just didn't find it.
But no, but this is how you set it up. I mean, you just have two pieces.
I mean, it's not,
that you
what
need
I'm
to
saying is
connect,
I'd
and
have to set it up. It's not set up. I wanted to make sure that maybe it was already set up and I just was not looking in the right place.
No, but no, but there's nothing else to it. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then, part of it is like, because the actual problem here is that in the UI, I want something to appear. I mean, I guess I'll just have to try it,
Mhm.
but it's a challenge.
So if
because the
you
thing that's not
okay.
working,
Yeah. If you want to test the UI now, then you should look into Scripter. So especially, for example, when it comes to completion, you're going to have a background process. Things will happen asynchronously. What Scripter is able to do is script the UI and is able to wait until the thing appears, and then you can assert basically against whatever you have in front of you. So let's search for example, something like by Scripter.
okay.
Just by Scripter. Okay, so there, for example, create behavior element by Scripter example. Sounds like an interesting thing. Okay, and let's take a look at the example map. I don't know which one we should, the more interesting one. Okay, so pick one of the top ones. And let's execute that. So, okay, what happened here is, okay, in this case, your new class does not exist, so it's not yet. We're certain we try to do something, to create something. So maybe we pick another one, but basically here it did. Let me see if I can find my Scripter. So this is how you would. Let's find something. Okay, or fire method Scripter, fire method coder by Scripter, for example. Okay, and then we're gonna do. Yeah, let's do. Yes. So, for example, do a fire method coded by Scripter. Yeah. Okay, let's do that and look at the examples map, and you're going to see a much larger thing, and pick something from around the top. But yeah. So this is a fixed create temp variable. So let's try to look at this one, the whole thing. Okay, or okay, this one. Let's try this one. Inspect the result. This is one of the steps. So that's exactly what you want to look for, right? So you have something, it happened. First of all, this one, the ranch appears asynchronously. Then the whole thing waits, it clicks on it, and then you get a pop-up, and now I can assert against the pop-up.
Okay.
So these are the kinds of things that you want to if you want to now test what happens at the UI, is the UI at the right place? Is it coming the right thing in the UI? Then this is the infrastructure that you want to use for that. And it's reasonably extensive, and it's quite it covers pretty much all cases that we have, including all the asynchronous part.
Oh, gotcha. Interesting.
So here, for example, if you look into the steps, in the scripter, there is steps. You will see that this script here, right, you have like little tiny things for every one of the actions in the test. And so they come with assertions.
Interesting. And is it generally safe? Sometimes you're doing stuff I found, and like, I mean, is it generally safe to do this in an image that you care about? Like sometimes when you're testing or debugging UI stuff, you could kind of get jammed up, freeze the image. Is this?
No, these are we use this one when we are building the distribution, so they don't freeze.
Gotcha. All right, cool.
And
yeah, definitely give that a shot.
And so this is one of the, and this is a really, really interesting part of Block, the graphical stack for those that follow, because it comes not only with things that you can debug, but it's a full framework to exercise Block. So you can, for example, script it for demo purposes, if you want. So we have cases where, for example, there's a coder tutorial, and then there would say, I want what happens if you click on the spotter button, and then when you show up the slide with that, then you will see the preview of we simulate that type of interaction, so that you can see what that means. So you can take it and do all sorts of funny things with it. So not only for testing purposes, you can actually simulate the whole UI.
The thing that you just mentioned about is that in the image? Is that in the book?
Yeah. It's
and you actually automatically walk people through the steps, or you can at least.
Yeah. That's the idea.
Where would I go to look at that? I'm really interested.
I forgot where it is. There were a few. There were a few of these. Yeah, we can follow up. I can look it up. I don't know exactly where it is. But yeah.
All right.
Okay, let's see.
My main question. I
could actually questions.
I could really quickly just show this stuff. This might be moderately interesting. So I don't have to do IT networking stuff very often. So I always have to Google when I need to do it. So I just I made a little domain for some networky stuff here. So I have this IP address range, which basically, you would call a network. And it just, so here's an example of, if you were setting up a private network in your house, it has the private ranges, so you don't have to remember what they are. So that, you would either be on the 10 network, 172 network, or the 92 network. So you can instantiate one of those, and then you can do stuff like, say like, does it include a particular IP? That's one little thing. And you can use this, actually, I have this server, these server objects where you can set up a server. So this, you can set up, obviously the name, the MAC address. Another, the MAC address, it's not formatted right here, but it is actually, no, why isn't it? Actually, I just made this demo stuff, so I'm not exactly sure. Oh, you know what, it might, let me see here.
No, it's not there. It's probably something else that you're putting in there.
Yeah. I don't, it doesn't even seem possible that it would show it there, but not there. Oh, you know what? It might be the MAC address for the adapter. So you can have an adapter, and then the adapter has the IP
And
address,
there it is.
address, all that stuff. So, and you know, it's interesting when you implement stuff like this, you end up learning obvious
Yeah,
but mind-blowing things like that a MAC address is just a number.
of course.
You know, it's just like, you know,
Yes.
an easier way to type it or to think about it, but it's just a number. And then like
Mhm.
an IP address is also like just a number.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you reify, you know, you start to, there's all these little things that start to become easier because when you're setting up, you know, I found this out the hard way. When you're setting up equipment and you have to pay, when you have to type the MAC address in, sometimes it'll only take it with colons, and sometimes it'll only take it with dashes, and sometimes it'll only take it with no separators. So when you have a MAC address object, then you can just have a little view with all the different ways that you might want to print it. And then you could just copy paste it into your router setup or whatever, what have you. So just, you know, like you take this thing and it saves me a little bit of frustration and 1 second, you know, but then you have 3,000 of these in the image. And now this is something I never have to think about again.
Yeah.
So now, you know,
So-
because, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, because now, because the server, so now the server object, once you have the meta, you know, kind of the information here, now you can start doing things that are
Log in.
you know, kind of complicated, like, and I want to SSH
nice.
somebody on someone. So now, usually I'd have to go to server fault for this, but you know, now, and you know, it can be very personalized. Like for me, I know a certain adapter is the one I want to SSH on. So I just, in my SSH thing, I have a, you know, I have it detect that particular thing. Like this obviously wouldn't apply to somebody else, but now I don't have to go into my server interface and look at all the adapters and figure out which one is, you know, statically connected and blah, 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 blah. I just SSH as.
Nice.
So that's a little something.
So if you search for coder show, you will find the
coder show. Okay.
Coder space show.
Yeah,
it's a page in the book.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, just
am I looking for any particular slide?
Yeah, this one, for example.
Okay.
The one you just went on, or this one.
Oh.
So if you click, you see that one is this one, and it clicked on the, it's not on the plus button, but yeah.
Oh, I see. In other words, when I opened it, it had already done the thing it was telling me that I could do via scripter.
Yeah. So
okay. So if I go back here,
right, and it's not every time because you now clicked away of it, but
right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna play with that.
Like this one, for example, you see here now it has the hierarchy is, maybe double click on the resizer here. Here. Well, actually here on the resizer.
Okay.
So, and if you click somewhere else, it basically it said click here. Right. So it simulated the click on that button and what happens with it.
Nice. I have some I have a couple of really exciting ideas for that. I'll save them for the next.
So, and this is all with scripter, right? You can test, you can exercise the UI and play with it like that.
Yeah. And
okay.
And I'll show this one last thing. This is pretty cool, actually. So, and then, well, this is just an example of the same thing with the server specific to QNAP. But the thing is that, you know, then it just enables, like, sometimes you have to go download an app for your QNAP server. But the download center, you know, you fill in all these boxes about which model you have and how many bays, but it actually, the URL in the query, it's embedded something about the model. So, so now you can just say, you know, instead of going to that and filling that out, you just go to browse download center, and because you have a QNAS object, it automatically puts the model number where it's supposed to be, and it just opens it right up. So,
nice.
But then this is what I wanted to show. So I had to study, I was studying for an exam, and they have these books of questions, multiple choice questions. And so, you know, most people either make photocopies or they just don't write in it and just think to themselves, what is the answer? And then, they write it on a separate piece of paper.
I
So
will click on one of those now.
I thought to myself, it's really silly because we have, a Dynabook. So I just modeled these things as questions. And when you select it, they're ranked choice, right? So when you select your choice,
Nice.
tells you if you're right or wrong. And then it embeds for each choice why it was right or wrong and the reason. Because in order to do this, to do this kind of studying, and it's actually supposed to highlight keywords, but I think something changed with the rope text. So the index is off a little bit, but this was supposed to highlight must as a keyword in the sentence, but it's off a little bit. But in order to do this with the test booklet, those study books that they give you, you have to go to the page where the question is, then answer it, then flip to the back to find the explanation of the question, and then keep flipping back and forth to see what was the answer, why was it wrong. So now just embedded exactly how you want to see it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so next thing would be to just say, oh, maybe let me just repeat those that I didn't do so well last time.
Yeah, I started implementing that super memo 2 algorithm, and I just got distracted. It wasn't important enough to do, but that definitely will be the
That's
next.
Nice. We want to do this we want to prepare this one as a tutorial for people learning to program GT. So maybe we can collaborate on just creating a tutorial about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
On this on this subject of spatial repetition.
And when you talk about fun, you talk about fun a good amount. Let me tell you something. After years of working with that book and flipping back and forth, and then just to see a little green check mark and all the things appear in line, there was a spark of joy that was undeniable.
Great. Well, this is super fun. This is really super fun. I'm really happy that you are you're exploring GT in ways that we have not necessarily foreseen, and that's exactly why we're building GT. Actually, we want people to, think of things that we wouldn't, or otherwise they couldn't, and it's it's a real joy to see all this.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really helpful. It's a pleasure to have a system, this fun to play in.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, talk to you.
See you around.